So as I was contemplating this Lenten season coming, um, as you've heard me say before, I take some time to say to myself, what is my focus? What can I devote and dedicate these weeks to? And fear was something that I recognize has been present in my life for a long time and continues to show different sides to me. How about that? Um, so most of the popular self-help literature directs you not to befriend fear, but to conquer it. You know, it's an enemy, and we're going to overcome this. And I think we've talked before about the idea of sitting lovingly with the uncomfortable parts of life. And that is sitting with an open heart. There's a classic Buddhist story that illustrates this. It's the story of Milarepa, a Tibetan monk, who he sought to meditate and find peace by going into a remote cave. And I like best the story as it's told by Pema Chodron in her book, Start Where You Are, A Guide to Compassionate Living. So I want to relate that according to her words. So she says, one evening Milarepa returned to his cave after gathering firewood, only to find it filled with demons. They were cooking his food, reading his books, sleeping in his bed. They'd taken over the joint. He didn't know how to get rid of them. So first, he sought to teach them the Dharma. He sat on his seat that was higher than everything else in the room, and he said things to them about how we're all one, and he talked about compassion. Nothing happened. The demons were still there. Then he lost his patience and he got angry with them and he yelled at them, and they just laughed at him. Finally he gave up and he just sat down on the floor and he said, it doesn't look like you're going anywhere and I'm not going anywhere either. So let's just live here together. The moment of surrender. At that point, all of them left except one. Milarepa said, oh, this one is particularly vicious. We all know that one. Sometimes we have more than one. And it's that, that sticky wicket that just keeps showing up. And he didn't know what to do. So he surrendered himself even further. He walked over and he put himself right into the mouth of that demon. And he said, just eat me up if you want to. And then that demon left too. So the story illustrates our theme today of befriending fear as a tool on our path to awakening. Rather than continuing to resist, Milarepa surrendered completely, didn't he? And he accepted what was, and that transformed his experience. It sounds easy. I can tell by the little laughs that everybody knows it's not. So this story, how does it relate to our modern day lives? We all encounter our own demons. Sometimes it might be, I don't have time to meditate. I can't turn off my phone even for a minute. I might miss an important call. I'll never overcome my fear. It's just always been there, and I'm afraid to move forward. That unknown is just too scary. It's been with me all my life, so why should I even try? Fear can take many disguises: chronic anxiety, addictive behaviors, all sorts of disguises. But fear can distance you from others, can cut you off from yourself, from your own creativity, and keep you from moving forward into experiencing your highest good. Sometimes fear is based on a physical threat. Oh, when it's not, it can lead us to the same feelings that we would experience if we had a physical threat. That fight, flight, or freeze. Perhaps we become angry and defensive, fight. Maybe we withdraw, become sullen or depressed, flight. Or perhaps we become unable to respond or even think clearly, freeze. If we regularly live in a place of fear, we develop a habit of these responses. Many of us have done that, including myself. So what we're talking about today is developing a new habit. Any painful emotion is rooted in fear. In order to get down to the root, we must, as Milarepa did, surrender. Befriend the fear, and by so doing, we disarm the habitual response that we've lived with. So how do we do that? We need to learn how to mindfully and kindly open to fear. Psychologist and author Tara Brach tells a story of a man who, even though he was vice president of a large company, was so afraid of a CEO that his anxiety kept him from contributing in their meetings. He just sat quietly, froze, right? So he recognized this, that he wanted to move past this, and he began attending mindfulness sessions. And after a few weeks of that, he identified that the fear manifested in his body as tightness in his chest. So he sat with that, with curiosity instead of judgment. Don't forget that line. With curiosity instead of judgment. He sat with that fear. Just like Milarepa did when he resigned to himself to those demons. The result was that this man identified the physical presence of the fear in his body and began to practice non-resistance. So he's sitting with this fear, and he comes to a place of saying, what is it that you need? And he heard the answer. Let it be okay that I'm here. So he found that scared place within himself that needed acceptance. And as he continued to mindfully approach his fear, the fear loosened its control on him, and he was able to loosen up. And he was able to find the courage to start speaking up and sharing his ideas, and even to joke and laugh with his colleagues. This is the kind of door we can open when we allow whatever is in us to be the sacred teacher. We mindfully face fear, we can transform our relationship with it. We may feel that the fear, anxiety, we may still feel the fear, anxiety, but it's no longer the boss. It's no longer in charge. We expand to allow it, and thereby become in touch with a greater expression of our being. Our mind clears as that fear clouded us before. Now that cloud dissolves and allows us to expand into the fullness of our Christ energy. This is unconditional love for ourselves and for others. Many of us come by this habit of fear honestly from being raised by well-meaning adults that wanted us to be safe. We walk our journey, we may also have the experience of being taken off guard by some traumatic experience that left a scar on our heart. I was talking to my friend, and she said, I want to be in control. I just want to be in control. I totally get that. I know I went for years after my daughter died thinking, I'll fall in pieces on the floor and I'll never get up again. And my friend, she's walking through that process with courage. Now it's time to open to another way. We can step into a mindful relationship with those places that scare us. And we can shed light on them. And then we can receive their gifts. As I contemplate the next steps on my own journey, I come up against these old patterns of fear, and I'm learning to sit with them instead of letting anxiety rule. So it was, as I worked with the process one morning in meditation, a clear message was given to me. The message was, you don't need to be afraid. You are awake. Kind of like coming out of a dream, isn't it? Where you're just so afraid, and then you wake up and you say, oh, that wasn't real, I'm awake. And the same happens in our spiritual life. We walk in the dream that there's so many demons. And when we sit with that and we let it and allow it to be, we wake up and we see the reality of the ever-present, ever-loving Spirit giving us all we need. So just that realization on that morning helped me to release a lot of fear and to move more deeply into a place of trust and faith. The Course in Miracles in chapter 18 contains the quote, "If you knew who walks beside you on the way that you have chosen, fear would be impossible." These mouthing words. If you explore more deeply into chapter 18, which is titled The Passing of the Dream, you will also read this, that your goal is light. Fear seems to live in darkness. And when you are afraid, you have stepped back. Quickly join in that instant of light, and it will be enough to remind you. Truth has rushed to meet you since you called upon it. If you knew who walks beside you on the way that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. You do not know, because the journey into darkness has been long and cruel, and you have gone deep into it. A little flicker of your eyelids, closed so long, has not yet been sufficient to give you confidence in yourself, so long despised. You go toward love, still hating it, and terribly afraid of its judgment upon you. And you do not realize that you are not afraid of love, but only of what you have made of it. You are advancing to love's meaning and away from all illusions in which you have surrounded it. When you retreat to the illusion, your fear increases, for there is little doubt that what you think it means is fearful. So what we do when we befriend fear is we bring that light, that divine spark, into illuminate the truth of the situation. And as we consistently practice that, the illusion begins to dissolve. We develop a new habit, a habit of love and acceptance, openness, and that leads to peace. We release the judgment that held us captive from expressing our greatest self. Author Gail Brenner, in her book At the Core of Every Heart, says, when we stop buying into fear and its projections into the future, realize we're here in presence. It's the unlimited space of now, filled with potential. Instead of abiding by that scary voice of fear that shuts down possibilities before we even get going, We are available to the magic of life, far beyond whatever the mind can come up with. And I would add this, that as we allow our expression of light to expand, in this expression, we finally find the peace that we seek, because we're in alignment with that highest divine self. And that brings complete peace, stillness, and assurance, because we're being led by the highest part of us, not by the fear. So I invite you to set an intention to expand your awareness of that divinity within you and as we move into this season of Lent. You might choose to explore that book, fasting and feasting. You might choose any other path. Taking a walk around the block, being in that silence, no earphones and no phone. Dare to turn off the phone. I know it's a big step. Most importantly, take time to give loving attention to yourself, to what you feel, what you experience. Honor that rather than push it away. We can only do this for ourselves. No one and nothing outside of us can give us this gift. This is a choice that we make to give this gift to ourselves. And before you say, I don't deserve it, I'm going to tell you, you absolutely do. And more than that, this world deserves nothing less than the individual beauty and love that your Creator formed this body around and this personality and brought you into this life for. This is my promise and my prayer for all of you. Namaste, my friends. So we're going to move into meditation. And the practice, I believe I've done this with you before, this Tonglen meditation. Tonglen meditation is a method for connecting to our suffering and that of others. Our normal response to suffering is that we close, we tighten, we brace ourselves. So this takes a little practice. But let's move into that quiet place. Taking some deep breaths. As you breathe into your heart, consciously release the tightness. Without getting lost in it, simply notice whatever discomfort, loss, uncertainty, anger, resistance that you're feeling. Accept it. Find the courage to put yourself into the middle of it. This practice is also useful when you feel that someone else is suffering. Just sit with that. Breathe in with awareness of wanting to release this suffering. And as you exhale, breathe out well-being, relief, clarity. Just take a minute or two working with that. When you begin to feel comfortable and settled, begin to work with the texture of the feeling. Breathing in the heaviness, breathing out the lightness. The heaviness is the suffering. The lightness is the well-being. It might help to imagine that you are breathing through all the pores of your body. On the in-breath, hot air enters every pore. On the out-breath, cool air flows from every pore. As you recognize the suffering in yourself, also recognize there are many beings on this planet feeling that same suffering. And so, in our oneness, we breathe with them and for them, allowing the heaviness to be there. Releasing it in lightness and coolness and comfort. As we know that we are joined with others, we are given the gift of love to ourselves and to them through our compassionate heart. Spirit rushes in as we open and gives us every gift that we need, even some we don't know we need, to lighten and open and find the strength and the courage to be a compassionate, loving, helpful presence. And when you're ready, ever so gently, just see yourself moving into that love. That divine love that is our source and our supply in all things. And so it is. Amen.